Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and this past week was filled with news about different things Apple has announced, as well as when to expect WWDC. We didn't have an iOS 15.5 update yet, so we'll talk about that and much more. This is your news update for the week of March 28th, 2022. And the first thing is, last week Apple had a massive outage. They had a bunch of outages that affected everything from iMessage to iCloud and more, and it lasted a few hours, and then after it was repaired, it seems to have lasted on and on, back and forth, depending on what service we're talking about. However, it's all resolved now, and if you ever want to see it, you can see Apple's system status here. This is all of their different services, and I'll leave a link to this in the description, but this lets you know that they currently acknowledge that there's a problem and whether or not something has been resolved. You'll actually see it here if there's an ongoing outage, and they'll have green, red, and yellow as well. So they'll have different system statuses, and you can see what's going on in each individual category. So again, I'll link that in the description below. Now, if you use Apple Maps, Apple updated this in Canada. So if we go into Maps, within Maps, Apple updated 3D maps in Vancouver, Montreal, and Toronto. So if we zoom in here, you'll see we've got buildings, but if I tap on 3D, we've got 3D buildings with different landmarks and more. This is something we've had in different cities around the world, such as San Francisco and New York City, for example, and now it's available in 3 different cities in Canada. Hopefully we'll see this rolled out more and more across the world, but Apple is slowly rolling it out all around the world. So this is very, very nice to have if you're using Apple Maps. Also, if you're in the UK and you use Apple Maps, Apple looks to be recruiting pedestrian surveys to sort of update, look around, and provide up-to-date data. So sort of requesting or maybe getting people to walk around and scan the different areas to get more information about the UK. So that's something that you may be familiar with if you're in the United Kingdom. And if you've had any of those surveys roll out to you, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Now, with the recent introduction of the iPhone SE 3rd generation, it appears Apple is already cutting production for it. So this is the 2nd generation, and when they release the 3rd generation, it looks exactly the same, with a red offering and similar colors as well, with different shades. Apparently, Apple cut production due to a weaker than expected demand, according to Nikkei Asia. So that's not really something that surprises me so much, as it looks like it's a good phone, but it's not really new, and it'll probably sell very well over time, but initially they may have made a ton of them. And this could really just be they already made a bunch, they're pulling back production, waiting for them to sell, and then ramping production back up. But it is a great phone. I'll have a review on my channel very soon. This past week, Beats Fit Pro got an update. Now, these are Power Beats Pro, but I don't have Beats Fit Pro. They got an update bringing their firmware version to 4E64. And so if you have them, you'll be able to update them similar to how you update AirPods. It's not very straightforward. You basically plug them in, make sure they're charged, plug in your iPhone, set them together, basically pair them, and walk away and hope they update. There's no easy way to just say update these, but the update is available. Apple did not say what's included in the update, however. Yesterday, we had the Oscars, of course, with its regular drama, and Tim Cook was said to be in attendance, where Apple TV Plus won Best Picture for the movie CODA. If you haven't seen this movie, it's definitely worth a watch, and it's historic because it's a predominantly deaf cast. So this is something that was really good. I thought it was a very wholesome, decent picture, and something that I recommend most people watch if you haven't already. So it's on Apple TV Plus, and they won that, and this is from Apple's newsroom. Now, the EU has agreed provisionally to a law that would force Apple to allow side-loaded apps, an alternative app store, so not just the regular app store, and this is a big one, iMessage working interoperably, so meaning that it would work between different messaging platforms. So it would mean iMessage will have to open up and interoperate with smaller messaging platforms if they request it. So maybe WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger or other messengers, Telegram, and more. So that's something we could see in the future. This is in the EU, and if they're going to have to roll it out there, they'll probably do it worldwide. I would love to see iMessage everywhere, but again, this would force Apple to have a different app store and allow you to sideload apps as well. That could definitely cause issues with security if you're not careful installing different things, and that's the thing Apple has said all along. But of course, if you know what you're doing, you could sideload an app like you can on a Mac. So this is something we may see very soon or may not see at all in the future. We'll have to wait and see, but it looks like it's going to be made a law in the European Union, and people will have to do it. But let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Now, this week, we expect WWDC 2022 invites to go out. If Apple does what they've done year over year, last year we had invites go out on the 30th, which would mean if they did the same thing, we'd have them as soon as Wednesday. This is the invites to the event, and then developers can sign up to attend as well. And supposedly it may be in person this year for the first time in a few years, according to Jon Prosser. We'll have to wait for the invites, of course, and if it is in person, there could be thousands in attendance, where Apple meets with people, with their engineers, talking to different developers to help them develop apps. But usually we have announcements at that event as well, where we have a keynote, people at attendance, and they talk about things such as iOS 16 and macOS 13, iPadOS 16, and then of course watchOS 9, tvOS, and HomePodOS 16 as well. We can expect that, maybe even a Mac Pro to show up there. So that's something we typically have. They usually send out those invites, and then the event is usually within the first or second week of June. Jon Prosser again is saying it will be on the 6th, and he's typically pretty correct with the dates of events. So that looks to be what's going to be happening in the future. So hopefully we'll see something with that very, very soon. And of course, I'm looking forward to those major updates, because that's when we'll see huge changes to iOS 16 and hopefully some we weren't expecting. Now, if you did update to the latest version of macOS 12.3, some users have reported issues with external monitors and also game controllers. So if this is something you use regularly, you may want to hold off until Apple updates it or patches it. And speaking of patches, Apple just recently stopped signing iOS 15.3.1 early last week. This usually happens when we get a new update. They'll stop signing the previous one, which means you can no longer downgrade to it. And then within a couple of weeks, we'll see a new public release. So we could see iOS 15.4.1 to relieve some or resolve some odd battery issues that some users are experiencing, as well as hopefully that music bug finally, where it would cause excessive battery drain. So most people, at least according to the poll I ran on YouTube, are not having excessive battery drain, but about 18% out of 25,000 or so people have said that they are having battery drain. So most people are not, but some people are. Now, surprisingly, last week we did not get iOS betas. However, I would expect them this week. This would be the longest Apple has gone between a public release and new betas in a very, very long time. So if we don't see them tomorrow or Wednesday or even this week, I would be very surprised, with iOS 15.5 betas and a final release of those versions, or that version probably in the beginning of June before WWDC. Typically, Apple will do betas for 15 or iOS 15 all the way until the next release in September. So those are things I would definitely expect to see, although we haven't seen anything about that yet. Now, as far as rumors or different things that are said to be coming very soon, Apple is said to be developing a hardware subscription plan, according to Mark Gurman at Bloomberg. Just like you subscribe to iCloud, you would subscribe to hardware or a phone plan to allow you to swap the phone when a new model releases, instead of maybe it being split over 12 to 24 months like they currently do. And that's something I actually questioned and said, well, we can kind of get a plan now, but it wouldn't be the same thing. Maybe I'd be able to swap it every couple months if I wanted to, or try something different for a different cost. So maybe the Pro Max is too large and I want to switch to the Pro or something like that. We would be able to do that. So maybe we'll see something like that in the future very soon, maybe at WWDC or maybe a future event in September. Now, as far as iPhone 14, according to Ming-Chi Kuo, iPhone 14 will feature a larger camera bump due to a 48-megapixel camera. Initially, many were saying that the iPhone 14 would be thinner. So instead of having a large camera bump like this, we would have a flat body design. Now people are saying that we're going to have a larger camera bump. So that's good. We don't know exactly what's going to come out, and there will be a bit of a surprise with that, but it does seem to be sort of a mixed bag of what people think about this. And then, of course, looking a couple of years out with iPhone 15, according to the Elec, which is a Korean website, Apple is developing an under-the-display Face ID sensor with Samsung. Or rather, Samsung is apparently working on an under-panel camera technology so they can put it underneath the display and then allow you to use things such as Face ID. So Samsung makes the displays for many iPhones and other products. It would make sense that Apple would use that technology to hide Face ID. So far, we haven't seen an iPad Pro this year, and that makes a lot of sense since it's got the latest technology from Apple in it. We have the M1 processor, 16 gigs of RAM. This one has a terabyte of storage, and it's really not utilizing all of that yet. So we also have a mini LED display and all of the latest technology inside of it. However, according to Mark Gurman, we could see one later this year around the fall or autumn with a new M2 processor in it. So we could get Apple's new M2, and then of course, once they announce that with the M2, we would get maybe the M2 MacBook Air. With the MacBook Air, of course, we can expect that all new design with different colors, like I've mentioned before. And apparently there's still plans for 2 different sizes. So instead of just a 13-inch, we would have a 15-inch as well. So we would have 13, 14, and 15 and 16-inch displays as far as MacBooks go. But the MacBook Air is said to not have the mini LED display and instead use the LCD display that we currently have. That makes a lot of sense since it's not as expensive, it's not the Pro line, and of course that would save money for not only Apple but also you as well if you were going to purchase one. So we could see 2 different sizes, and it may not even be called MacBook Air anymore. Now that the MacBooks are so thin to begin with, it just might be a MacBook. So we could have MacBook, MacBook Pro, and then maybe even some sort of MacBook Studio at some point. But right now it looks like that's what we'll have in the future. And so that's everything with the news this past week. I'm looking forward to WWDC Invites and of course the next version of iOS most. Hopefully we'll see some big changes with iOS 16, and I talked about that in a video last week, some things I would really think they should change at this point. It's been many years since we had any sort of redesign. I would love to see that and more. Let me know what you're looking most forward to in the comments below, and of course I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do. If you haven't subscribed already though, please subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.